Hello everyone. We need to talk about Baldur's Gate 3, because honestly, it's way better than it has any right to be. Like, almost suspiciously better. We're talking about a game that dropped in 2023, but somehow managed to pull off a feat that feels almost ancient. It harkens back to a simpler time, a time before microtransactions, day one DLCs, and before the entire games industry felt like it was designed by that one guy who always picks the evil dialogue option in RPGs. Back in the day, when you paid for a game, you got a whole game. You didn't have to take out a second mortgage to unlock the extra content. There was no season passes. You had no cosmetic DLC packs, no surprise mechanics. Looking at you, loot boxes. You brought the game. You took it home, and it was that. You just had hours of content ready to be enjoyed and explored. Baldur's Gate 3 feels like a direct portal to those times. I mean, look at the character creation system. This is so detailed. I'm genuinely surprised it doesn't ask me for my star sign or my childhood trauma. It's a game that is ready to go the moment you boot it up. No need to worry about downloading 37 gigs of day one patches. You just hit start game and you're ready, you're in. You can load in, be as detailed as you like, and set off on your adventure. And it asks the question, who are you? It wants to know who the adventurer is. It wants to know the backstory and how it can fit you into this incredibly vast and vivid world of wonder. And if that's character creation, you know you're in for a treat. Speaking of which, polish. Look, we live in an age where the word polish has a whole new meaning, specifically in the gaming industry. These days, polish means we'll patch the game later, but for now, please enjoy the glitch that turns your protagonist into a limbless spaghetti monster whilst the floor disappears. And this was the case with Cyberpunk 2077, Fallout 76, and even Anthem. They made launch day a national joke. In fact, let's talk about launch days. I don't know what it's like in your country, but in the glorious United Kingdom where I live, we used to have things called midnight launch. You'd queue up with every single demographic from the broad spectrum of humanity, from single mothers to smelly neckbeards like myself, and wait for your local game to open. You'd edge closer and closer to the front of the line before purchasing your game. If you were smart, you'd pre-order your copy because that was actually a thing. It actually guaranteed you a physical copy of the game. Second rabbit hole is the point of... What's the point of pre-ordering now? No one is laying out hundreds of thousands of pounds betting on the volume of sales in the first month of a game anymore, so why do we even have the option to pre-order? It makes no sense. But then Baldur's Gate 3 comes along, waltzing into the room like, hey, I'm just here to be fully functional, hope that's okay. And I'm like, what's going on? And yes, I know you're going to say, oh, Ollie, you're a hypocrite. But listen, the right thing to do is not pre-order games. However, pre-ordering Baldur's Gate 3 was a great decision. The early access was fun, and experiencing the first act of the story whilst it was in development was actually an engaging peek behind the curtain of development. They even got beta testing right, which is another thing the games industry seems to have monetized. Imagine any other industry in the world where you have to pay for the privilege of testing a product for them. Insanity. Unless you are Larian Studios. And yeah, these folks know what they're doing. They made Divinity Original Sin after all, but the scale, the sheer ambition of Baldur's Gate 3, it should have been a disaster. It's the perfect storm for bugs and microtransaction traps. Instead, it just delivers. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Microtransactions. I know I've hit on this a few times already so far, and we're like, a couple of minutes in? Don't look so surprised. This is the part of the video where I remind you that we're living in a dystopian hellscape where publishers think we're all dying to pay £20 for a limited edition unicorn mount that serves no other purpose than to be marginally sparklier than other mounts. Now, what does Baldur's Gate 3 have to say about that? Absolutely nothing, because it doesn't need your money. You've got hundreds of weapons, magical items, spells, armors, and none of it comes with a please insert your card prompt here. It's almost like other games are just presenting you with a sum up card reader, waiting to take contactless. When is the last time a game gave you a complete set of content without asking you to pay extra? It's like your friend who offered pizza and then didn't charge you $5 per topping. Absolutely unheard of. Baldur's Gate 3 isn't just good because it's polished and doesn't try to rob you every 5 minutes. It's good because it's dense, a word we don't usually associate with modern AAA games unless we're talking about some truly questionable plot twists. It's a game that respects your intelligence. The branching storylines, the intricate dialogues, the massive world that feels alive, all of it gives you a choice that genuinely matter. You can charm your way through, intimidate NPCs, or just straight up turn into a bear and maul somebody, which is honestly the dream of most RPGs. And yet, despite all of this, Baldur's Gate 3 isn't celebrated as the greatest game of all time, which just seems a little bit unfair. I mean, this is a game that didn't just exceed expectations, it annihilated expectations. It's as if Larian looked at the modern gaming landscape and said, hey, what if we gave people more than they asked for and didn't charge them extra? Like, who in their right mind would do that? Maybe the reason Baldur's Gate 3 feels too good to be true is because as gamers we've been conditioned to expect less. We expect broken games on day one. We expect piecemeal content trickled out over microtransactions. We expect paywalls for the smallest things. But this game showed up like a friend who brings 2 bags of Doritos to a party. Like, nobody asked, but yes, we're in. So yeah, Baldur's Gate 3 is way better than it deserves to be. It's an apple crumble at an age where we're lucky to get something half-baked. But it's also a reminder that the old ways weren't broken, and maybe, just maybe, we can hope for more games to be like this in the future. And the real tragedy is this: if any game deserves a DLC, or to use the correct terminology of the time, an expansion pack, this would be it. In the meantime, I'll be over here playing Baldur's Gate 3 for the foreseeable future. I suggest you do the same. Or, keep spending £10 on pixelated armour in some other game. Your call. And by the way, you can also choose to make a character who has 0 clothes. No judgment, just game design choices.